Hey, Joel Malkin for WJNO.com, and protecting the Palm Beaches, we reach out to Boynton Beach Police Chief Michael Gregory. I appreciate you joining me for this very important feature that we do here.
Well, I'm glad to be a part of the program today. I always look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, and we've talked before. Been a little while. You know, we had... Well, we still have the pandemic going on, but in the early weeks and months of the pandemic, I reached out to Sheriff Bradshaw quite a bit because, you know, as the top cop of the county, always had a lot of new information that he was sharing. So I am reaching back out to all our different chiefs, and again, I appreciate you being available. Let's talk about, we have a couple of things, a few things here. I understand that you guys had some your burglaries to businesses and residences are down year to date. Talk about that, and then some recent issues that you had.
Well, certainly. We're really fortunate that we've been able to keep on top of crime problem in Boynton Beach so far in 2020. It's been a very odd year as we've all lived through and experiencing the COVID and the storms that we've had currently and going back over the summer. So it's made a quite interesting time for policing, but we've been real proud of the work that our officers have been able to do in patrol and our detectives have been doing. We've been able to sustain a double-digit reduction in serious crime in Boynton Beach this year, 2020, over where we were year-to-date in 2019. Roughly our number, like I said, we're really excited about double-digit numbers, and it seems to be over the 15% reduction from the previous year. So we're really pleased about that.
Now, the numbers, I was given 49% down on residential burglaries, 41% down, or I'm sorry, reverse that. 49% down on business burglaries, 41% on residential burglaries. I guess you were giving me an overall number, or is that a different number you were giving me?
That was for the overall. Let me pull my spreadsheet back up in front of me here. Yeah, that was for an overall. When you look at all the crime, I think the ones you're looking at there were for the businesses, like you said, and residential. But when you look at all the serious crime that the FBI measures and most of the outlets measure for serious crime in different communities, they look at things such as robbery, aggravated assaults and batteries, burglaries, auto thefts, larcenies, and when you add up those serious crimes, we're looking at looks like between 15 and 20% reduction so far year to date from where we were last year. Now, specifically related to the burglaries that you're talking about, yes, we've seen even higher numbers of our reduction, a greater reduction this year over last year. So we're still pleased with that specific category of crime, which is burglaries.
Now, we had the county under lockdown for a while earlier in the pandemic. Do you think that had anything to do with the numbers going down when it comes to the burglaries, especially?
I do. I think that has played a role in crime in general being down. Obviously, people have been, thank goodness, obeying and listening to a lot of these lockdown requirements put in executive orders that have come out, and the parks being closed, schools being closed, and the like. So there's fewer places to congregate, and thus people stand out when they're outside when nobody else is. So I think that's had an impact. But what I've also seen is that as the period of the pandemic has lasted, people have gotten pandemic weary. They've come back out. They've relaxed a lot of these executive orders that were restricting businesses from opening. So restaurants are opening again, commercial establishments are opening again, and of course the criminals have started to surface their heads again. But in spite of that, our guys have been on top of it, and they've been doing a great job trying to keep this crime in check.
Now, one thing that I've heard from other law enforcement officials around the area, and I know that the state attorney, Dave Ehrenberg, Palm Beach County, has also mentioned this. One of the things during the lockdowns that did tick up a bit, and you can tell me whether that was the case in Boynton specifically, was the domestic violence issues. Was that the case there?
I don't have that specific number in front of me right now, but in general, usually during the holidays, during extended periods of vacation where the kids are at home, the family members are at home, the extended family is all at home in many cases, we end up seeing a little bit of an uptick in domestic disturbances.
Yeah, and that is so unfortunate, and That's just one of the things that the pandemic is, I was going to say one of the negatives of the pandemic, but is there really any positive to the pandemic aside from, I guess, maybe, people staying at home and not coming out and committing crimes as we were talking about? But you did have a few recent, and you mentioned that since things have reopened and people have wandered out again, you did see, some of those crimes that you weren't seeing during the lockdown. And I guess just recently you had a few business burglaries, right?
That's true. Since probably the last week of October, definitely beginning of November till now, we've probably seen a bit of a rash of related, seemingly related business burglaries specifically. And in some cases, they could be attempted burglaries and or vandalism that occurred to them. But we're seeing a bit of a pattern between 10, 15 different cases that we've been able to say that the pattern looks very similar. And I guess you'll be the first to be able to report on this. But as of this afternoon, we believe we have a suspect in custody, and we'll be looking to ensure that the evidence lines up with those burglaries against the suspect we have right now.
So you think that this specific suspect is responsible in the Boynton Grocer attempt, the Dunkin' Donuts, Vitamin Shop, Tsunami Subs? I don't know if Tsunami Subs, they had a break-in, but I'm looking at the story here. Oh, yeah, they did have their windows smashed. Do you think one person was responsible for all of those?
We see a common pattern between a number of the incidents. I don't want to get into naming business by business because, again, there is still an active investigation, and our detectives will be looking to compare the evidence we have in those cases to the suspect that we've identified at this point. So we do see a pattern between them. We do believe that there's a number of them that are related and were committed by the same suspect, and we do have a suspect in custody.
These were all on one day, right? Earlier this week in the early morning hours?
No. No, the pattern that we were looking at extends from the beginning of the month till now.
Okay, I know that there were a couple of them that had. Okay, I'm looking now. A couple of them had happened the same day. Yeah,
there were several happened on Tuesday, November 10th. However, the pattern that we're looking at extends beyond that.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to this one because we're in a world now where a lot of folks are talking about police reform, more transparency, that kind of a thing. And I know our local police chiefs, our local police departments are really, really good working with the community, just from reaching out to you and several of the others. And you guys have shared some of the information of things you do with the community. But one thing that you've done recently is put out a new transparency page on your website. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. We're really excited about this new element to our website. We've titled it the Transparency page because that's such a key element to so many conversations that are happening with regard to police use of force, police reform, conversations that are happening around the country. Everyone talks about the importance of transparency with our community. So to be in the forefront leading that charge is where we want to be. So I noticed as so many of these Zoom calls and go-to-meeting calls with different constituency groups, they ask a lot of the same questions. What are you doing at the police department about training, and how are you training your officers, and what policies have you been able to modify and enhance as related to the modern policing practices, and what about this Can't Wait police use of force reform program campaign that's going around the country. So I get asked these questions quite a bit, and I thought, well, if there's this much interest in these topics, I think it would be wonderful just to have a central place that we can pull all that together, and anyone who wants to consume that information go right to this transparency page on our website, and that's what's there. It lists out what we've been doing with regard to enhancing and modernizing our training of our officers here in Boynton Beach, with regard to use of force, with regard to anti-bias training, anti-profiling training, how we're developing our supervisors and our command staff to police and to lead a police agency in the 21st century. We're putting all that on our webpage for people to be able to look at and consume and understand where we are. Same with our policies. Some of our high liability and key policy and updates that we've been putting out. I put those policies right on our webpage for body-worn camera, for how we recruit and select our personnel, and for response to resistance, also known as use of force policies. Those are actually on our website, and anyone can go there and read them and compare them to other agencies if they have access to those. As I mentioned, there's a nationwide campaign called 8 Can't Wait, which has a number of recommendations. It's a private group, a 501c3 group, that has done a good amount of research into use of force policies and their practical application in police departments around the country in different cities. And they've noticed that with certain policies that are in place seem to have a corresponding impact to bring down certain use of force instances as well as complaints. And they've come up with these 8 recommendations that they've seen in places around the country that when agencies implement these 8 policy reforms, there seems to be a correlation with a reduction in use of force by those agencies and in use of force complaints. So on our one of the things we did was looked at our use of force policy, and we found that, for one, we already had a number of those 8 already implemented in our policy, that we weren't behind the curve. We were right up to par with those recommendations. And then where we weren't, we had a couple of things we could tweak. We've modified our policy to take those new perspectives on use of force policy. We've updated our policy to reflect those, and now we've published that back out for the public to see that we actually do meet up with the 8 Can't Wait recommendations. And just for your audience's benefit, what are those 8 Can't Wait? What are they actually talking about? Well, they go into things like requiring officers to de-escalate whenever they possibly can at a scene. So it's not just an option, but it's in policy that when it is feasible, and it's not always feasible, but when it is feasible, officers are expected to try to de-escalate situations and calm things down, slow that call down, and bring in extra resources, whether it be mental health folks or crisis intervention team members, if the scene will allow them to do that. Banning chokeholds and strangleholds. Requiring other officers who see misconduct by an officer, requiring them to intervene and stop that officer from proceeding with whatever the policy violation is that these officers are witnessing, particularly if it's a use of force situation like what the whole country witnessed in Minneapolis earlier this year. Also, banning shooting at moving vehicles, requiring that all alternatives to firing your weapon are exhausted before shooting, requiring that when feasible to give a warning to someone before you shoot at them if necessary, and then obviously requiring comprehensive reporting and review of when officers have to apply force to a situation that's thoroughly reviewed and there's oversight when this occurs. So those are a good number of the 8 Can't Wait measures that have been going around. I know a number of cities in Palm Beach County have already implemented these recommendations, like we have in Boynton Beach, and a number of major cities around the country have also implemented them. So we're glad to be included in that number with the police reform issues.
You know, there in these instances where, and I'm not talking about Minneapolis, but in instances where there's when an officer has shot somebody, when they've had a gun, pointed at their own head, and I've often wondered about, how, because people will second guess. You'll hear people start, especially in this atmosphere that we're in now, with the defund the police atmosphere and everything else, you will hear people go, well, he shouldn't have, that officer should have never shot that. And sometimes they come out not justifiable, but sometimes they do. And I've often wondered, how difficult is it to make, as an officer, to make that split-second decision? If I've tried everything else and this guy will not put his gun down, it's pointed at me. How difficult is that decision to not pull that trigger?
It's always been a hard decision, but today in this environment, it's even that much harder, and it's a grave concern in policing now that the officers aren't too fearful to engage in their role. That's a big conversation that's happening because of all of the attention that's been put on this topic. But what we do expect is that they follow their training, and we train them in how to apply force when they can shoot, when they can't shoot. We train them as to what the legal ramifications are, and those have not changed. In spite of the social activism that's occurred around this topic, the laws are still the laws of the land, and that's what we've always taught our officers to rely on, their training and the application of the law. But what we've seen in cases, and thank goodness we haven't had to deal with this in Boynton Beach, but what we've seen in these instances around the country aren't as clear cut as you just described, where an officer has been assaulted, or an officer has a gun at their head or something like that. These situations have been much, just like in Minneapolis, much different. Even in the situation in Georgia, where Ahmaud Arbery was jogging down the street and got assaulted by people who lived in the neighborhood for jogging down the street. Right. It's a different situation altogether that has led to the unrest and has led to the recommendations of policy reform. And I'll put this point on as well, because a lot of folks aren't aware. And that is that there's over 18,000 police departments in the United States of America, 18,000. And in police departments, we have local authority and local control. So the police chief in each of those departments gets to set the policy the way that they want to see it implemented. So therefore, we may very well have 18,000 different sets of use of force policy and overall department policies in this country. So while I like to think Boynton Beach is pretty squared away, we've gone through our policy. We have regular reviews of our policy. We've been accredited by the state of Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission. We're trying to, like many agencies in Palm Beach, we're trying to be at the forefront of these issues. There are, unfortunately, cities that aren't, and they have antiquated policies, and they haven't been updated recently, and their training may be behind, and they're behind the curve a bit. And when it comes to applying police tactics to those policies, they don't always flesh out. So the end result is that you have situations like in Ferguson or in Minneapolis or in Brunswick, Georgia, or in these other cities that have seen the turmoil, and they fix it. But the point is there's 18,000 departments. And when you do it one by one, it's going to take a long time to fix them all. So there's more that can be done. There's a lot of conversations. I'm very proud of the activity that's been happening in Florida. Florida Police Chiefs Association has proactively jumped at this on this situation and have come out with model policy guidelines for all police departments in Florida to look at, review, and consider for implementing in their local departments. So it's more like a guidepost. It's not a mandate. But the state has the authority, the state legislatures, to make it a mandate for minimum standards in policy, minimum standards in hiring, minimum standards in training. And I think that's where we're going to see much more action take place, where there's a minimum threshold of what departments have to meet in those areas to try to make sure that we aren't having travesties of justice occur.
Are you are in the middle of recruitment right now? Before we get into kind of details on that, I did want to ask you, because we've heard this in other places around the country where you had a number of officers retire early and things like that. Are you trying to recruit because something like that, or is anything like that happening now? Have you had a higher number than normal of people either retire or quit or anything like that?
I don't think we've had anything above average or higher than normal as far as retiring or resigning or whatever. But what we do have a little higher than average vacancy rate right now. And I'll tell you, when I got here, I joined the Boynton Beach Police Department 2 years ago, and we had a huge recruiting push and hiring push that year, 2018. And what I was able to witness after getting here was that we had a major push. We put a lot of labor into processing applications. We received over 400 applications during that effort. And we ended up with, it might be about 4 officers out of that effort, which is way, way below the results we would have expected out of that many applications, and all the testing that was required and all the time and effort that went into reviewing applications and taking people through the testing process and the polygraphs and the not the polygraph, but we use a tool called the CVSA, Voice Stress Analyzer, a lie detector test, and psychological examinations, medical examinations. It's a very costly and time-consuming process to go through these law enforcement applications, and we had a very poor result. So we took the next year, 2019, to basically overhaul our process. And while we were doing that, we weren't able to really hire many folks while we overhauled the process. We changed our standards, we changed our job requirements, we changed our qualifications, we changed the testing process. And in 2020, this early part of this year, we were able to start rolling that new process out. So we were able to start accepting applications again and testing applicants. We've been slowed and dogged down a little bit with because of COVID and the restrictions that place on us as far as having groups come together and do things together. But we're really excited with the new process we have in place. We've opened it back up, new hires, new processing, new testing. We're doing a lot of things online, so we don't have to have so many people in contact with each other anymore. So it's a much more modern process than we had before. And we've got the pedal to the metal to put the applicants through our new process and start filling the vacancies that we have.
So, yeah, and you took to Facebook this week, your department, or maybe it was last week, and you put out there, BBPD, join our team, starting salary $56,825, $5,000 signing bonus for certified police officer. How many hires are you looking to make?
We're looking at about 15 hires we're going to make.
And and talk about the different units that you're in need.
Well, all of those positions we go into patrol. So when you start out in police work, everyone has to start learning the job from the ground level, and the rubber hits the road in our patrol division. So everyone who comes on, if they are not certified law enforcement officers, they first have to go to the police academy, and we'll pay for that. We'll send them to the academy. They have to pass the state exam to get certified and to get their license, you might say, to be a police officer. And then we'll put them into our in-house training program. If they are successful with the in-house, what's frequently referred to as Field Training Officer Program, FTO, was that they're successful with that. They go into the road and start in patrol, handling calls for service and taking care of the good members of our community here. Once they are into patrol, we'll take more seasoned officers with more experience and fill our specialty position vacancies that we may have in different units. Usually, it's either going to be in patrol or it's going to be in our detective and our detective squad. So.
Okay, yeah. The post had a bunch of different specialized units, but I'm guessing those are people who are the already certified police officers. That would be.
Those will be for people who are already on the department. So obviously, when you want to bring someone in to be a property crimes detective or a major crimes detective investigating sexual assaults or investigating homicides, you're not going to take the junior person who just got there yesterday. You're going to hire someone you're going to transfer into that unit, someone who's got a good amount of experience, especially if they've got experience handling those type of calls, homicides, special victims calls, child abuse calls, to be the investigator. You want someone as seasoned as possible.
What is it in one or two sentences you would say that you're looking for in a candidate?
Integrity, trustworthiness, a willing to serve the community and be a servant to this community. Those are the things that we're looking for. We really are looking for people committed to policing and not just to building a resume or using this as a stepping stone to some other aspiration in the future. We're looking for people that can be trusted with the lives and the property of the people and businesses here in Boynton Beach.
All right, very well. You have anything else to add before we wrap up? I feel like I've kept you a long time here.
Not at all. It goes by fast. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to talk with you. I always do share with you what's going on in Boynton. We've always got a lot of great things happening. We're hiring for our new officers, which is our big push right now to get them on board and into the Boynton Beach uniform. And I'm ecstatic with our new website that's pushing out positive information about what the city of Boynton Beach is doing in the police department to stay responsive and respectful to members of the Boynton Beach community here.
All right. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time to join us for Protecting the Palm Beaches. Boynton Beach Police Chief Michael Gregory on WJNO.com.